once you get drafted, as you know, there's a lot of great players. I mean, in Toronto, Gilmore was there, Matt Sundin was there. There was a lot of, pretty good players that were in my position at center that did things that I did as good as I did or better, you know what I mean? And so it's not always on your time. And that's what you have to realize. It's just relaxing, keep working, stay positive, stay with it, and your time will come when it presents itself. Or you have to be ready when it comes.
That was former 8th overall pick in the 1992 NHL draft to the Toronto Maple Leafs, Brandon Convery, and you are listening to episode 140 of the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolak. Just watch me now. Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolak, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolak, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, welcome back or welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolak. I am your host, Jason Podolak, here for episode 140. And today we're going to be speaking with Brandon Convery. He's a former teammate of mine in St. John's, Newfoundland, and also with Toronto, with the big club and with the Maple Leafs. We played together for about a season and a half. And Brandon's story is awesome. It's been a long time since I've wanted to have him on. And by awesome, I mean he's just the perfect guest for my program with what we discuss here, player development, and the path for every player is different. The recipe card for every player is different. The challenges that we face and the circumstances that are put in front of us are all unique. And sometimes they are surprising. And for Brandon, he was a star from the get-go. Was a star through minor hockey, was a star in the OHL, and was an 8th overall draft pick and was one of the 3 players considered for the first overall spot by the Tampa Bay Lightning that year. He was flown in with 2 other players for an entire week to be evaluated. He ended up going 8th to Toronto. And at the end of the day, Brandon ended up playing 70-some games, I believe, in the NHL. What was it? 72 games for 3 different teams. He played for the Maple Leafs, he played for the Canucks, and he played for the Los Angeles Kings. And the question is, and we talk about it, is like, why? So what happened? Why was he unable to make a career, an NHL career, out of his hockey? And that's the $1 million question, right? That's the answer we're looking for when we're trying to help our players get to where they want to go, and we want to help them be the best that they can be and set them up for the most success possible. There is things that happen sometimes within our control and sometimes out of our control. And for Brandon, one, we got along real well. He was my centerman for the most of the time that he was there, and whatever, we shared the same like sense of humor. We really liked ripping on each other, and there was always that humor in the locker room, and we were colleagues in the sense. I mean, well, everyone in the minors is wanting to get to the NHL, but we were 2 of the top prospects with the Maple Leafs at the time, and we shared. I guess equally in the frustration of maybe not being where we wanted to go. And with that being said, there's an impatience around that, and there can also end up being a cynicism. And with Brandon, he talks about in this interview how he wish he could go back and how he wish he could change some things just with his patience, right? And with his level of acceptance of where he was and not being in a rush to be where he thought that he should be. That is much easier said than done. Brandon also went on after his career was over. He went to have a successful career in the Swiss League after he left North America, won a championship there. But he was so compelled by his own journey that he wanted to help athletes, very similar to what I'm doing now. He had a stable of individual athletes that he would help when it comes to mindset and personal development, and he would also coach some of his own teams there in California. And he has now gotten away from that, and he's into insurance. In the business world, but he was obviously compelled, and he was pushed forward in the sense of like, this is an issue. Like, the support available for players is an issue. It needs to be talked about, and there needs to be a third party that's available for athletes to help them through whatever adversity or challenges that might exist. And so Brandon and we didn't beat up on the Toronto Maple Leafs here at all. Obviously, it would probably sound like sour grapes anyways. But the communication in Toronto at the time and the player development in Toronto at the time was not necessarily very good. I mean, I can say that honestly. Neither Brandon nor I really knew what we were supposed to be trying to do, where we needed to develop. There wasn't much communication when we got brought up about what we were supposed to do as a role, or what we were supposed to, how we were supposed to play. And with that lack of communication, there was these unanswered questions, which leads to, uncertainty, which leads to, indecision, and which leads to kind of lack of enjoyment, for lack of a better word, with the game, and not really knowing where you stand within the organization. And so Brandon talks about, his desire to want to be an NHLer and doing all the right things really in the minors to warrant that opportunity. And even his stat line with the NHL as a young guy was pretty darn good. His first taste of action in the NHL was in 95-96. He got called up from St. John's, where he was almost a point a game in St. John's, and he got called up. He had 11 games. He had 5 goals and 2 assists. You do the math on that. That's going to be close to a 30-40 goal season if he played the full season there. So obviously shows signs that he was able to play. And then the next year when he got brought up again was the one that we talk about. He ended up having 2 goals, 8 assists. It sounds like in a limited role. Sounds like he was a fourth line role that year, and was struggling potentially with ice time and with line mates, and to be the player that he wanted to be, or maybe thought that he could be. He ended up getting moved to Vancouver. Vancouver there with Keenan. He started off the year, looked like was doing great. He thought he didn't really know what he did wrong. He had 9 points in 12 games. And then was let go and put on waivers and picked up by Los Angeles, and it never really panned out there. So, what was the problem, or was there a problem? And for Brandon, it sounds like it was just misunderstood was a word that he used. That he cared so much that sometimes he got in his own way. His impatience was something that got in his own way, and just really overthinking the game and kind of trying too hard to get to where he wanted to go. And it was just a mental battle the entire time. So I've really enjoyed Brandon Convery. I've always enjoyed him. He's a ton of fun. He's a smart cat, and he gets it, and I do find that sometimes the more intelligent a player can be. Obviously, this is a broad brush statement, but they can, like the overthinkers, sometimes the high IQ, and I mean this in like an intelligence standpoint, not a high hockey IQ, but a high IQ person in the sports world can end up being an overthinker. And the overthinking is something that gets themselves in trouble. And we do talk about that a little bit, and I do believe Brandon fell in that category. And sometimes those players like Brandon who have the most success with someone like me, or with some type of support in that aspect, to support the mental side of the game away from the game. Not necessarily having a problem putting it together on the ice, but having a problem putting it together off the ice when it comes to the uncertainties, the things that aren't in your control, the overthinking of some of these mechanisms that are in place. So yeah, this was a long time coming, this interview. There is some echo in Brandon's office. I gave him hell for it before we started. So you're going to have to deal with a little bit. I don't think it's unbearable at all, but it's just not clean audio because he was in an office without anything on the walls, and it sounded a little bit echoey in his headphones. So my apologies for that, but I do think it's worth your while to take a listen, because even if the dominoes are lining up for you right now and your player, whether it is in minor hockey or if it is in junior hockey, geez, like just because something hasn't reared its head when it comes to challenges or adversity, or some area where you need to show some resilience, like it will be coming. And Brandon talks a lot about building your support team, keeping a tight inner circle, but having the support cast there, which he felt that he never really had. Like those are important, and we want to build the person behind the hockey player. So when stuff does happen, we are now prepared to deal with it. We feel that we've already established a safe relationship and a comfortable relationship with somebody. Instead of, which I find a lot of people wait for, like the bottom of the barrel moment, and then only then will they now seek some type of support. And that's not the best way to do it, because geez, we don't want to get to the bottom of the barrel in the first place. And then when you're trying to establish a relationship in that scenario, it's not awesome. So yeah, I mean, to do your best work as a hockey player or do your best work as a parent, I think you should establish some type of connection early, even when things are going good. That is really the best way to do it. And the establishing the relationship when things are going good are going to help the player be even better, find more within themselves to become a better player. And then also when things don't go their way, there's already strategies, processes, tools in place, along with the support mechanism to make it much more manageable. So, without further ado, I will bring you my conversation with Brandon Convery, a heck of a player in his own right, somebody that bears the label as being a draft bust with Toronto. Welcome to the club for Brandon, as they didn't do a good job of developing any of their picks. So either their scouting staff was terrible or their development staff wasn't great. But either way, I think it's an unfair scenario, because this guy was a heck of a hockey player, put up lots of numbers all over the place, and there's lots to be learned from his lesson. So here is episode 140 with Brandon Convery. All right, well, holy crap, this has been a long time coming. 4 years, maybe more, to get this man, my former centerman, on the podcast. But welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast, Brandon Convery.
Thank you. It's a privilege. I've been wanting to get on your show for a long time, but it's a tough one to nail down.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, you sure don't act like it's a privilege. Gee, hunting you down. You'd think you're the prime minister or something. It's unbelievable.
No. It's good to speak with you. I've obviously we haven't talked much over the years, but when we do, it's like we have just yesterday. But obviously, you're doing some positive things in the world, which is great to see.
Well, hey, trying. I wanted you. I mean, for multiple reasons. One is that you were a hell of a player. Obviously, this show is about trying to be a player, and trying to be the best that we can be. Your story is not too far off of my story. And we had the same team in common. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of, there's some commonality there that I think is worth getting into. And then also you got into kind of what I'm doing there for a little bit as well. And I just think that we can probably shoot the shit and have a pretty good time doing it, catching up. So, I don't know I really don't know the best place to start with it, other than maybe that entry into junior. Like, I want to start just with a little bit of your career and seeing how that was for you, and all the rest of it. Was the OHL always where you wanted to go?
Yeah, I think at the time when we were coming up, the NCAA wasn't, obviously I would say probably the quickest version was going, to the OHL, the fastest route to pro, and that was my focus at the time. I think, my brother at the time had a scholarship offer to Ohio State. He was a couple years older, but it just, I was on a fast track, and that's what I wanted to do, is to get to the pros as quick as possible, and that was the best route at that time.
Right. And coming out of excuse me, Ontario, was there a team that you wanted like to play for, or did it really matter?
No, I mean, I wanted to play for my hometown, and there was an opportunity to be selected, and it just didn't work out. And thankfully, I did get selected to the Sudbury Wolves, which was a great experience, and one that I'm glad that it worked out that way. Playing in Northern Ontario is a great atmosphere. We had some great teams there. I think the first 2 years, I think we were rated number one, in the Canadian Hockey League at the start of the year. So we had some good teams, great players and teammates. So it was a great time.
Did the OHL draft existed then?
Yeah, yeah.
Where did you go on that?
I dropped to the third round, and as an underage, so I played 4 years. I think at that time you had to go in the top 3 rounds, right? Or you weren't allowed to go as an underage.
Okay.
I think there was a little bit discrepancy whether or not I was going to go the NCAA route. So teams, I think, were a little bit hesitant, but it all worked out.
Right. What do you mean by an underage in that scenario?
Well, your regular draft year wasn't until a year later. So I think in the WHL, right, you have a 15-year-old protection draft, do you not? And most of them, they don't play, do they?
That's actually, yeah. No, you can't play. So the way, like
Yeah,
Landon DuPont was the first guy ever that got that exceptional.
yeah,
No, I guess second because
yeah,
Bedard did it too. But that
yeah.
they got drafted as a 15-year-old. Yeah, I guess you're right. And then now he's playing
Mhm.
as a 15-year-old. Everyone else has to wait that 1 year to
Yeah.
their 16.
Yeah, so I think it was similar to that. You had to be selected in the first 3 rounds. So, but yeah, it was like I said, I had no regrets at all with that.
Right. But then you played as the 16-year-old,
Yep,
not as a
yep.
15-year-old.
No, not as a
Right.
15.
So
No.
that was when you had the 26 goals and 56 games in Sudbury as a
I
16-year-old.
think, yeah, my
Yeah.
first year, yeah, yeah, yeah. It kind of, when I first got there, like I say, we had a great roster. So I remember when I first got there, I think I was a scratch maybe the first couple of games. The coach told me, "Hey, go upstairs and watch," and I was like, "Wait a minute," and here we go. But it just kind of once I got in, I got one goal, and then it just my confidence just grew, and I kind of took off from there.
Right. Yeah, oh, wild. So, okay, so that's actually a cool place to start because there's a couple guys that I'm dealing with right now, just in
Yeah.
my own stable that are going through some of that.
Mhm.
You step into this league, right? The OHL guys I'm working with here,
Yeah.
the WHL, AJHL, whatever it is. You've been a good player somewhere else, of course, right? To
Mhm.
step in as a 16-year-old as a young player. Never have you experienced not being in the lineup or being healthy
Yeah.
and being told that you're not good enough to be in the lineup, however they want to pose that to you. That's a pretty big slap in the face for a lot of players, and
Yeah.
how to deal with that. Like how was that for you, and how did the coach deal with it back 30 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, 30 years ago, there wasn't much, it's like basically, here's what the deal is, go upstairs and watch. There wasn't any kind of coddling or anything like that. So, I was just excited to be there. I didn't really get caught up I didn't feel I was, could jump right in and be that top player like I always thought. And so maybe it didn't affect me that much at the start. And so it was a positive transition, going from maybe going in and out of the lineup to being in consistently. And I just took advantage of that opportunity. And, maybe it was luck or anything, but I got a couple goals early on and it just progressed from there. But it can be, when I fast forward and look at other opportunities down the road, maybe 4 years later, I didn't handle it as well. So
Right.
it was kind of, looking back, I wish I kind of was like I was at 16 years old when I was 20, when I approached the game and maybe been a little bit patient and just relaxed a bit and watch, learn, and stick with it.
Right. That junior experience for a lot of guys. Well, I mean, obviously, you and I both know a lot of guys don't. I mean, you play at junior, that's a pretty good accomplishment. A lot of guys want
Yeah.
to and try to do it, and a lot of guys can't. And that's sometimes as far as could be the end of the road. But that is a big
Mhm.
transition, like at a
Yeah.
really, really formative time, right? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you know, you're moving away from home, you're with billets, you're playing with 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, you know, like there's a lot of stuff happening socially, you're changing schools. Uh, like, I don't know, just drop back into that spot. Like, is that
Yeah,
something, you know, are you
yeah.
surprised that you were able to handle it? Would you let your son or daughter do something like that now at that age?
No, I mean, I have an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, an 11-year-old right now, and every time I say to my wife, "Can you believe we were at this age?" And I try to relate to that, and to think that what my parents were going through when I left to go to Sudbury, at 16 years old. So, but I think I was fortunate. We had a great group of guys there. Mike Pekka, Glenn Murray, Jamie Matthews. We had a great team there with some great leaders, and I think that's what helped the transition, is that we were all in it together, and we kind of grew up together for 2 or 3 years until we all went on our own way.
Right. What do you say about what's your opinion on that playtime scenario? So, I mean, that's another one that I get asked a lot, meaning, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
can potentially play on X
Mm-hmm.
team, right? As
Yeah,
a younger player, maybe
yeah,
not getting the minutes that I want, maybe in and out of the lineup, but I'm in this environment that's better, you know, practice is better.
yeah,
Or do I take a step back and maybe be a bigger role on a different team? I know it's tough to do that one with one
yeah,
brush, but like, what are your thoughts on that
yeah.
in general?
I think it's a fine line, right? You got to be careful who you're associating yourself with and the environment that you're in. But also, I think there's two parts to it. I think that you have to be mentally strong enough to be able to handle what's coming, and I think that's the most important thing, and probably what you're trying to help, your colleagues and things like that with, is having the patience to stick with it. If it's not right now, doing the things that you need to be doing in order to take advantage of that opportunity when it presents itself. I think that's the biggest thing. And when I look back, is that you have to be ready. And too many times, I think that where I was anyway, at a higher level, was focusing on, thinking ahead way too much. And, I think that if you only can control what you can, it's not easy though. And it's not easy to go play maybe on a team that's less talented and you don't win as much, but you play more. So there's a fine line between that, but ultimately it comes back to, I put the responsibility on, myself as a player, that you got to be willing to do things maybe you're not used to or willing to do in order to get where you want to get to. And
Right.
we've all been through that.
When you say that word mindset and like knowing that
Mhm.
you're ready, because it's interesting, because that it is something that breaks some players, and it's not
Yeah,
necessarily like their own fault. And some players end
yeah,
up like persevering through like the really hard times, and turns
yeah,
out to be that best thing for them, right? Like being
yeah.
somewhere that was hard. How would you gauge the idea of either preparing a young athlete or knowing if they are prepared when it comes to the that mindset side?
It's a good question. I mean, it's a tough one. I just think you have to really monitor kids on how they carry themselves and how they go about doing their day-to-day things. And obviously, listen, I felt I handled it better at 16 than I did at 21. And again, it gets back to is who you're surrounding yourself with, having a great support team, and remembering what got you there. And I think a lot of times when you start getting overwhelmed and things like that, you got to get back to the simple things and things that you do well, and maybe take a step back and a breath of fresh air, and say, hey, I'm good, let's stick with it and keep moving forward in a positive way, as opposed to, I was just full force, wanted to be, the top, the best in the best league, right away. And it's just, I think I needed someone to tell me, hey, slow down, Brandon. You're okay. Just keep getting better week by week, month by month, and you'll be in that place soon enough.
Right. Yeah. Easy message to relay, if
Yeah,
anyone is
yeah,
even going to relay it. One,
yeah.
two, and the second one is, yeah, do you absorb that and digest it and believe it? You know, like I think
Hmm, hmm.
there's two problems with that, although I agree with them, right? Like one is the
Yeah,
message, and two, do you want to receive it? Because we're always in a rush, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I think, right? I mean, we
yeah.
believe we're good players. We're ready to go. Let's go, right? Like, what are we waiting for?
Mhm.
But when it comes to that, like 16 compared to 21, you've said that a few times now. 16 stepped into the OHL. It's obviously a big step. Maybe a few less expectations, I think might be a
Yeah,
word that could use there,
yeah.
right? So then you deem less personal pressure. You go through these. Your next season was your draft year. 40, almost had a goal a game. You end
Mhm,
up going 8th overall
mhm.
to the Toronto Maple Leafs, like crazy. I'm sure that must have been
Yeah,
bonkers.
yeah.
What was that? I guess what was that year like, and what was that experience like with? Well, maybe just the year. Like, did you did with the draft? Some people say, "Oh, I was oblivious to it." Some people, I mean, some people are really tied into it. Like, what was that like for you from the get go?
I mean, I wanted to be the number one pick right from 5 years old. That was my goal. And so I was on track for that. I think if you look at my stats in that year, I think I only played 44 games. And I believe if I had played, the full regular season, I think Tampa Bay had the first pick overall. They brought three of us in and interviewed us for the whole week. And so I was right there for that. But I was content and excited to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, growing up 2 hours down the road, it was a huge honor. And one that there were some exciting times and obviously some not so exciting times where I wish I had have handled things differently, but no regrets on that. That year, my draft year was exciting. Um, there was a lot of things that went on. I think under 17 was the year before, under 18 was that year. So there was a lot of things that I didn't really get caught up in the draft per se. It was just an exciting time. And,
Right.
and there was a lot of good players that I was playing with. Like Mike Pekka and myself, we were line mates my first 2 years. And so there were some great players. We had fun and we did well all together. And like I said, the draft was just a result of how well we did throughout those couple of years before the draft.
Right. You so your things were rolling, obviously, too. You mean so your
Yeah.
draft, your things were rolling when you were in the lineup. Was there some injury there?
Yeah, I had a hip problem back then when I was younger, and so I missed a few games that year, unfortunately. But that year might have been almost a goal a game. It was I don't know how much more I could have done. It was a positive year, a fun one. Broke my ankle, got two-handed in the playoffs against Oshawa. Broke my ankle. I thought we had a good chance of maybe winning the Memorial Cup or taking a good run at it. And ironically, before the draft, they have they bring all the prospects in, and we all do the what do you call it? The
The
testing
testing,
and
combine
everything.
testing. Yeah.
I literally had my cast taken off 2 days before the testing. Hadn't ridden a bike, haven't done anything. We had to go in and do the VO2 testing and the wind gate and all that. I failed that completely. Uh, but yeah, it was quite the experience.
I fail. For everyone listening who hasn't done the VO2 test, you can't technically fail it. You're going to get a number, but it might not have been a very high number
No,
for
I
yeah.
don't think mine was that high.
Oh shoot. That's funny. So anyways, I'm gonna go just a little diversion because I just brought up your team from that year, your draft year. And
Mhm.
yeah, Glenn Murray, Derek Armstrong, like NHLers, Michael Pekka, yourself.
Mhm.
But then
Mhm.
interesting, Jamie Matthews, who led your
Yeah,
team in scoring 95 points in
yeah,
64 games.
yeah.
Never played a game of pro hockey in his life. Like, and that's an interesting story too. What was the story with him?
When I got drafted there the year before, I was told to go watch him when he came to Kingston when I was 15. Like they were talking about this kid was the next Wayne Gretzky. Like he was a very intelligent player, funny guy from Nova Scotia, great friends with Glenn Murray, but it just never panned out. I think he got selected maybe to Chicago, but it never went anywhere. And it's kind of how do you pinpoint why certain players it worked out and certain players it didn't? But he
Right.
was a great player.
That's wild. I know it's so
Hmm.
crazy when you see these great
Hmm.
players and then you don't see anything about it. You're not
No,
really sure why.
no, no,
Um,
no.
so I love that mindset though. So you said, like, you directly said, from the time I was 5 years old, I wanted to be the first
Mm.
overall pick. And you know what?
I.
Now that you say that, I think that, I mean, I could probably relate to that too. So when
Mhm.
you're living that, and now you're in that, I mean, you're in the right league to make that happen.
Mhm.
You're on the right team to make that happen. You're playing
Mhm.
the type of game that it, like, you're essentially, it's coming true, right? Like, it's a
Yeah.
reality that this is something. Where
Mm.
does something like that, in your opinion, like, where does that come from, as far as even that type of belief system to have that at so early?
I don't know. I think I have to put this back to my dad, who had a heavy influence on myself, played hockey. You know, every day, every week, it was hockey. We watched it, we played it, and it was just ingrained. And we were around it, the environment. My brother was 2 years older. He was a goalie, but it was just an environment that we were around growing up. And obviously, I gravitated towards it and was hungry to play the game all the time, and wanted to be the best at every level. And I think that's what drove me to have a lot of success, early on through, to 18. And then obviously, a couple things I would change once I got to 18. I think that was maybe one of the things that if I could do over was, once I got drafted, I thought, okay, I did it, but you have to reinvent yourself. And maybe I stopped doing things that I did up until that point from a mental standpoint. I was very goal oriented. I used to write on a board before every game how many goals and assists I thought I would get. And then after, I would fill in what I did. And ironically, I would either achieve exactly or even more than what I thought I would get. And so when I look at, a lot of the top sports psychologists or people, talk about, you know, mental training, I was doing this at 7, 8, 9 years old without anyone telling me to do
Right.
it. And so, obviously, I'm sure clients that you work with, goal setting and stuff like that's important. But I think maybe my one downfall that I would regret is that I stopped focusing on that once I did get drafted, which I do regret.
And stop focusing on what exactly? Like, your output?
Yeah, well, the goals. I mean, now once you get drafted, it's like, okay, I'm here now. Now what's next? And so, I think there was a lot that comes with, being in that environment, as you're aware. I think it's important to keep setting goals every year and trying to attain certain goals, that you keep your actions and everything in line with it, and keeping yourself accountable. I wish I continued to do that like I used to prior to getting drafted.
Right. So was that a little bit of you never came across as complacent to me at all, or not working. But did you think that was kind of like, is that what it was? Like, you stopped working a little bit as hard too then, after that?
No, no, the work side of it never. No, I always wanted to be first. That never stopped. I just think, like, you need to have specific things that you're focusing on mentally, like you're holding yourself accountable to and working towards. And what that is at that level, I don't know. But being patient and working towards those without getting frustrated, without getting overwhelmed. I think, because I was a fast track and wanted to get in and wanted to be there. Once you get drafted, as you know, there's a lot of great players. And I mean, in Toronto, Gilmore was there, Matt Sundin was there. There was a lot of, pretty good players that were in my position at center that did things that I did as good as I did or better. You know what I mean? And so it's not always on your time. And that's what you have to realize. It's just relaxing, keep working, stay positive, stay with it, and your time will come when it presents itself.
Yeah.
Or you have to be ready when it comes,
Right. Yeah. Two great points.
which is
Uh,
not easy.
yeah. No, it's not easy. A lot of
No,
it's not easy.
no.
Um, you can see that in different players. The environment, of course, like
Mhm.
really matters a lot,
Mhm. Mhm.
as far as what ecosystem are you getting put into, right?
Mhm.
Who is above you, right? How's the team doing? All
Yeah.
that stuff. Like a lot of times, even these guys, did somebody pan out, or did they do great, or did they not, or you're
Mhm.
a surprise, right? Well, holy smokes, a lot of it has to do with that, just in and
Mhm.
of itself.
Yeah.
The thing I found interesting with the Toronto Maple Leafs was they did have these good players, but they didn't have good teams, and
No.
so they weren't doing well.
Mhm.
Uh, you would think that they would be in an environment where they'd be bringing younger players in to play a more prominent role. Yet that was really never the case there the whole time, because they were
No.
always either trying to hang on to whatever, or believing what they
Yeah.
had. So I think that didn't help you or I in that environment very
Mhm.
much. Just going to take a short break from the conversation with Brendan Convery to give a huge thank you to the Power Tech podcast with Andy Paquette, who had me on a couple weeks ago as a guest. They usually don't have guests on the Power Tech podcast, but Andy had heard some of my stuff online, some of my stuff in the Instagram feed, and said that he really respected what I was doing and wanted to have a discussion about it, and to be able to talk about the mindset programs and development that I offer to players. So I said yes to that. Andy seemed like a good guy. We had a good conversation prior to the podcast, and then we had a really good conversation. And without knowing obviously all the different podcasts out there, it was quite compelling to me to see the feedback from that episode. Power Talk seems like they have a reach that is a little different than mine. Mine seems to be mostly Western Canadian, Western U.S. based, whereas Power Tech, they're out of Ontario, and there's quite a few people that listen from that area, and all around North America. So great reach with the podcast. It exposed me to a lot of new listeners, and maybe some of you listeners are here now listening to the Up My Hockey podcast because of that interview there, and a lot of new interest in just in the programs, not only from the individual aspect. A lot of parents and players have been reaching out, but also from a team aspect. So definitely want to thank Andy and the Power Tech team there for having me on. It's awesome to be able to reach more people, to be able to help more players, which is what I love doing, having players have a better experience with the game of hockey, to be able to put their best foot forward, to step in closer to their personal potential is super exciting for me. And yeah, the conversations that I've been having in the last 2-3 weeks have been numerous, but have been welcomed. So thank you very much to the Power Tech team. And if you are somebody who has not listened to the Power Tech podcast, go check them out. Go give them a ring. If you're a listener of mine, it sounds like there is a lot of similarities kind of in the discussions that they have over there on Power Tech, and want to support the player as well in their advancement through minor hockey and into junior and beyond. So thank you, Andy. Thank you, Power Tech team. And thank you for all those who have reached out. And if you are somebody that is interested and has been a listener and has not reached out with regards to your player and how I can help, or with the team that you're with and how I can help, please do. Let's get it going. Let's support your player to be the best that they can be, and or your team, which is a really great aspect to get into team development and culture development. When the whole team understands the language and understands the tools, it can really be a galvanizing thing that allows the whole team to go through higher heights and more wins and better experience, and you name it. So, yes, looking forward to those of you reaching out, and let's get back to the conversation with Brandon Convery. How was that first year like? So you do go
Yeah.
eighth, you
Yeah.
get drafted. What is the message, if one at all, about like the plan for you within that organization?
There wasn't, I look back at it, I don't think there was much of a plan. I mean, I think they were struggling as an organization. I think the year before they beat Detroit, went on that run and lost to Gretzky in LA. There was a little bit of excitement there. But, I look back, like you just mentioned, we had some good players. I mean, Mike Gartner was there, Wendell was there. Um, but there obviously was a leadership component to that, because there was good enough talent. Why wasn't the results moving forward. And I think even blending in younger players to that organization. If you look at the 80s and 90s, even into the 2000s, Toronto, I don't think that they ever developed a first round pick. I mean, you can pick on your hand, maybe a couple. I don't know. Obviously, the game's changed where I feel it's a younger man's game now, where when we were in it, I felt like it was a 30, 31-year-old league with maybe a few 20-some, that were on the team playing. So I think that was a little bit different. But I don't know. I know now, being on winning teams and looking back on why we were successful on those teams compared to why we weren't on certain teams I played with, for sure.
Yeah, there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
I was just wondering that, though, as far as like the plan, because I know you and I are both very pro
Mm-hmm.
communication,
Mm-hmm.
and that's easier said than done too, right? Like I don't think there's anybody that's going to raise their hand and say I'm anti-communication, right? Like
Yeah.
people think that they do it. Just some places do it better than others, and
Yeah.
some players need it more than others too. Is the other thing, right? So I think that
Yeah.
that's part of the psychology of this whole player development aspect that gets missed a lot of times. It isn't a one size fits all for guys.
No.
Like you
No.
need to understand that Brendan Convery might need a little bit more of a game plan for him than
Mm-hmm.
Danny Markov does.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's two different personalities, two different people. Uh, how do you feel about that? Because I know that you got into what I'm doing now after the fact, so I think that
Yeah.
obviously strikes a chord with you. Probably what I'm saying there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
you were to be director of player development at that time, and you just drafted Brandon
Yeah.
Convery now, like
Yeah.
how would you handle that scenario?
Yeah, well, I think looking back at that, even mentioning that, Pierre Dorion was the head of player development with Toronto when I got drafted. He passed away a year later. And so, as everyone knows, like I was his guy, right? And so he passed away, then someone else comes in, takes over. Maybe he was a fan of somebody else. And so I do think it's important when, go where you're wanted. So if you're on a younger team, and I get a lot of times, I had calls from parents and kids who are like, where should I go play? To me, it's an easy answer: go where you're wanted, and take advantage of it there. But the with Toronto and the plan, I don't know what it was. And I look back, it's my own responsibility. But I do think back, my oldest son just turned 18, and I look at him right now, and I'm like, I mean, he's young. He doesn't know any better. And so there needs to be some guidance. And so post hockey, I got into doing some seminars and mentoring similar to what you're doing, because I felt it was a huge need and what was lacking in the game. It wasn't about, the on ice and working on your shot and skating. That's a given. But I felt like what was missing is, building that internal strength, and knowing that, talent might take you to places where talent can't keep you. And I think that was very evident for myself. I had enough talent. I was my own worst enemy. And, there's things that you need to have in place. And I think coaches need to do a better job at, like you said, we're not all the same. And I'm not saying one needs more than the other, but from the teams that I had success on and winning championships, the coaches, got to know you. There was a trust level that you knew that their intentions were the right thing. And I think a lot of times in my early age, I didn't trust anyone at the pro level. And I don't think that's the right way to go about it in that environment. You have to have somebody that you can lean on and trust. And, it's crucial, I feel, for
Yeah.
development.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a marketing pitch, like for what I do. I think like the third
Mm-hmm.
party aspect, that a player knows that you
Mm-hmm.
have their best interest at heart, period. Right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no other ulterior motives.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
want John Smith to be the best player that he can be. End of
Yeah.
story, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the only thing that I have on my mind. And I think that players need that. I do think that the bridge has been gapped uh, a little bit when it comes to, like, when we played, and you played on a few teams too. So I like your opinion on this, but I always felt that it was and us, like the players versus them, the coaches
Yeah,
and the management. Like it
yeah,
never felt like we were on the same page. It always felt like that we were
yeah,
adversaries within the same organization. I think again, it seems like some of these guys that are getting it now and getting good results, like the Paul Maurices and
yeah.
the Coopers and the Sullivans, like they've bridged that gap, right? Like they're
Well,
making the connection there.
but if you, yeah, I mean, if you listen to them, I mean, I don't know each of them, but I would love to play for them. Just listen to them how they go about
Yeah.
themselves, right? They're honest. There's probably a two-way. You could talk to them about anything, but they've gained the trust of the players, and so I think listen, I think that's for me, when I was coaching my players, I still get calls from my players to this day. This was 10, 15 years ago. And we had great teams because the kids knew I did things how I wish I was treated. And we had a lot of success. Was I hard and expected a lot? Absolutely. But I look at those guys like you mentioned, are prime examples. Players want to play for them, they trust them, and they have a lot of success. But not just one year; they're consistent.
Right.
And you look at the teams that don't have that consistency. I think you can look and pinpoint kind of it's a trickle down effect from the top down why they don't have success.
Right. Yeah, from a culture standpoint, I mean, obviously, I try and look at the game from a holistic standpoint. Maybe not obviously, but I do, right? So there's the
Mm-hmm.
individual involved, and it's like, how do you have collective excellence,
Yeah,
and how do you develop
yeah,
that culture? And I think that there is an approach that I think has been proven successful, and I think it's not the challenge with it. I think, and I don't know how you feel about this, is that it's not that everyone can institute it, because you need a really special person in that
yeah,
chair to do it, because it's
yeah.
it's a skill set that not everybody has.
No, it's like anything though. I'm trying to find a physiotherapist here in Nashville, and there's very few that are at that level, right? And you apply that to anything. Just because they're coaching in the NHL doesn't mean they're outstanding compared to their peers. And so there's very few that I feel that are elite and that get it, and the ones that don't, I feel get moved around quite a bit, and the ones that do get it are consistent and they have success, whether they win the cup or not. I mean, that's the hardest thing to do, but they're right there.
Yeah. How was your so your after your draft year? How close were you out of camp? Whether the first year or the second year, like was there any close calls at all?
I can remember my first training camp. I was so uncomfortable; it wasn't even funny. I mean, it was. I didn't. I went to camp. I didn't have my gear prior to camp. I had new gloves, new pants. I didn't even bring my stick, so I used to cut the length of my stick. I would measure it. I didn't even know what length the stick. Like it was the most uncomfortable experience, and as a result, it didn't go well. And start off while being a first round pick in Toronto. And so looking back, I learned at it. Like I have clients and they have kids today that I tell them, I was like, ship the gear as soon as you get drafted, get comfortable, get that out of the way. I mean, they do a great job at that now. I mean,
Yeah.
but it was awful. I can honestly admit, my first, Pat Burns was the coach. Burnsy was not the fondest of having communication with young people at that time. It was pretty known, but I was awful. And I think that kind of started kind of putting me behind the ball where I had to play catch up. But I think by my second year, things went great. Randy Wood hit me from behind. I think a week before the season started, I was playing with Wendell Clark and Mike Gartner as my, wingers. Things were going really well, and then that just kind of put me behind the ball. I was out, I think, 6 to 8 weeks, and then they had to send me down again. So, but I can remember that first training camp. It's so important for kids to be prepared and to give themselves a chance to be comfortable. In an uncomfortable environment, which is hard to do.
Right. Yeah, totally hard to do. And especially when you have the eyes on you. I mean, like no one really
Yeah,
I guess it gets brought up a bit, but like that idea, I mean, like being number 8 and being the first one and feeling like there's more eyes on you. And in Toronto, there definitely is more eyes on you. It's not
Mhm.
even, that's not an exaggerated thing. Was that
Mhm.
when you started to feel the magnitude of being that?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of like, I never thought in those terms like pressure. It was just, I was my own worst critic. And I think obviously the way I thought from a young age obviously propelled me to get to where I got to. But it also was a kind of a slippery sword where at that level on those particular circumstances, it can be a huge disadvantage for you. Because I wanted everything so quickly and was so, not to say overwhelmed, I just kind of self sabotaged my own self, which, again, my own responsibility. But that's why I think it's important to surround yourself with a good environment that's going to say, hey, you're okay, keep working, keep moving. I can remember talking to, I think, the sports psychologist back then, and he'd be like, don't worry about it, you'll be fine. And I'm looking at him like, I need to play now. You know what I mean? Like, this
Yeah.
was like life or death for me internally. There was no other go play in the minors for the next 10 years. It was like NHL or nothing. That was kind of my mentality. And
Yeah.
was great for certain instances and not so good for others.
One of the things that comes up for me with the players that I work with is the idea of the self criticism, right?
Yeah.
So like I do think that there is an element that is a high performer trait. I mean, if you don't have
Yeah.
high standards and if you aren't particular about your game or your practice habits or any of these things, yeah, you're not going to get to where you want to go. But there does become a point where if we focus on it or if we're too hard on ourselves, that it can become a detriment.
Yeah.
Is that essentially kind of what you're thinking? Like you knew that you didn't have a good camp, and the fact that you didn't have a good camp, and maybe weren't living up to this expectation that you had for yourself personally was almost worse than
Yeah.
somebody else telling you.
Yeah, well, exactly. It was my own. I knew I had, the ability and stuff like that. It was just, self sabotage in a sense where, you know, just have to take a step back and keep moving forward. And like I said at the time, there's nothing wrong with kids even today, like going down. Even my first year junior, I sat and watched a bit and take notes and way you go. Playing in the minors was almost the norm back then in the 90s. You go down and play a year or two, and then you get called up and you're ready to go. So, but in my mind, I was just, you know, uh, built in my mind that I wanted to be the best, and if I couldn't do that, it was internally not good. And then you do start reading the Toronto Star or the Toronto Sun, and maybe there's times that you shouldn't be looking at that. And I'm sure today with obviously online media and things like that, the smart ones probably don't even pay attention to it, which is a positive thing.
Yeah. Well, how do you combine? So, like, if I'm getting back to the crit, like when I'm working with players, the idea is
Mhm.
we want to be able to use the information available. I mean, from
Mhm.
whatever it was, right? The practice or the game that maybe like we're
Yeah.
disappointed in, but then like
Mhm.
how do we use it and then move on and step forward? And it's all with the intention
Mhm.
of playing the long game, really, right? Like trying
Mhm.
to get better over the long term, which you've spoken to, having some patience involved in the process. Uh, would that be something like if you were to go back now and be 20 again, like how would you handle the self critique and what would you do on a kind of day to day, game to day basis?
Well, definitely. I mean, I think today now with studying of game tape and film or whatever, they have access to everything. And I think being a student of the game, I mean, they have real time. They watch it even after a shift. They got their iPads on the bench. I think things like that. I would be. I mean, I thought I was a student of the game, but now looking back, I mean, I would have been even more off ice focused on whether it was maintaining strength physically, and maintaining the mental component of it. So you're doing the things and reminding yourself what got you there. I think we lose hindsight. We start focusing on other people and what they're doing as opposed to getting back to what you do and what you do best. And as long as you're doing it in that environment, you know, you got to do what you provide and do best, and obviously learn and grow your game. I was an offensive player. Um, you know, should have been pulled aside a little bit earlier, even been told how do you play away from the puck. And if you were very good at that, which Doug Gilmore was great at, if you're great at that, you have the puck more in return offensively. And so just understanding those concepts, I think for younger players coming through, I think you have to have that discipline, not only on the ice or in training, but mentally to watch, rewatch video, things like that, and how can you do things differently and improve upon. I'm big on, reminding yourself what you're good at while you're working on the little things that can improve your total game.
Oh, I love you saying that. That's just what I worked on with my group last week is like
Yeah,
understanding what makes you unique and valuable, like, and really
yeah,
owning that to the
yeah.
best of your ability, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
because you're not helping the team. If I didn't produce offensively. I mean, there's other guys that would hit and block shots, and it's like you gotta be at your best to help the team. And if you're not helping. And
yeah,
so, I look at, again, you get back to success at the World Juniors, success at in Europe, on Team Canada, on teams where we won. It's just each individual brought something and contributed and did that very well. And so, that's why we won. And even though we won, it was hard. You know what I mean? So that just tells you you have to have everything lined up in order to even have a chance to win. Uh, that's
yeah.
why looking back now, I see these teams that are consistently taking an opportunity to win, even at the junior level or even at the pro level, winning the Stanley Cup. It's until you've won, you don't understand it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Can you think that you can want it too much? Like,
Yeah,
and can that be a problem? Again, I've been trying to get Danny on Markov because he is such an awesome
yeah,
human being, and
yeah,
what a great dude, and I think
yeah.
he'd be
He's probably fishing. He's fishing in Florida too much. He doesn't have time. He doesn't get reception out on the ocean. But yeah, I do. I think for me is a prime example of maybe wanting it too much too quickly. And
yeah,
I do think there's a fine line. And again, I think that's why programs like what you're doing, the importance of parents to understand that there's certain resources around them, like what you're doing, like what I used to do. I think when I was doing this 15 years ago, I feel it was ahead of the time in a sense, right? No one was talking about it. It was more on ice, more whatever. Now I
yeah,
think everyone's, you listen to McKinnon talk, he works with somebody, everyone's open to it and understands the importance of it. So it's,
right.
a little different.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just like, we can get so dialed in. I don't need to name names. There's lots of like young players now that are like
Yeah.
really uber dialed, right? Like
Hmm. Hmm.
from like a 24/7 kind of standpoint. And
Hmm. Hmm.
um, I just know, like, for me, and not that I was conscious about it, but I felt that I did do better when there was some type of a diversion.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes in St. John's, it wasn't the best diversion, obviously, with George Street
No.
maybe being right there or
Yeah.
whatever, but,
Well,
like,
or having to get up for an alarm clock or something. You know,
but
there's
even
some
so that
things.
that but even saying something more like, I don't know, like guitar or going fishing or
Absolutely,
like some of these
absolutely,
types things, right?
absolutely. I listen. You immerse yourself, be good at what you do. I do feel that looking back on all this, the shame of all of it is that look how much we each of us accomplished in the game. We didn't win the Stanley Cup. We didn't play 1,000 games. All right, but if you look back, I'm like, pretty much did everything there was to do in the game. I won at every level. Didn't win a Stanley Cup and didn't win an Olympic medal, but represented my country 10 times. Um, So to that's what I'm saying. Getting back to is taking a step back and looking at, hey, what you've accomplished, and think about it, and write in a journal, write in your phone on things that have gone well, and read it. Actually look at what you've accomplished. And I think now that I do that, it gives me some peace of mind, even though, my career got cut short in a sense, but I'm content with what I did. Just
Right.
I wish I did things a little longer. But I think the value in that is as players to enjoy the moment, enjoy the process, because it goes by in a blink of an eye, and all of a sudden I'm in the life insurance business now. You know what I mean? You have a whole nother life to do other things, and it feels like a lifetime ago. But enjoying the moment, because it goes by so quick. And there was a lot of fun times where I was just, I was an idiot to myself internally, and wish I'd have enjoyed things even more.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. And like you say, I mean, you go back to those days though, and where do you? That's the thing, like with even me now. So
Mm,
kind of the same, essentially the same boat. I mean, I thought that I was going to be an
mm-hmm,
NHLer for a long time. I thought that I was going to be an
mm-hmm,
NHL All-Star. You know what I mean? Like I
mm-hmm,
thought whatever I thought. Turns
mm-hmm,
out I played 41 NHL games, right?
mm-hmm.
For a long time for me, that was a massive disappointment and almost an
Yeah.
embarrassment, right? And now age kind of gives you a different perspective, and then you're able to look back and be like, okay, yeah, what could I have done different?
Mm-hmm,
Where did I show up where that didn't serve me? Uh,
mm-hmm.
and even with what I do now, there's massive amounts of accountability, not only in my life, but also like what I teach, right? You need to be accountable
Yeah.
and you need to take
Yeah.
ownership,
Yeah.
almost like extremely. But there is an ounce of it, and maybe even way more than an ounce, that some of these things aren't in your control. Like some of
Right.
these things, maybe you didn't get what you deserved at certain points. Like, and that's sort of the thing with me. Like when I go back to that 20 to 22, year old Jason Podolin, or for you, Brendan Convery,
Mm-hmm.
like I was playing really freaking good hockey.
Yeah.
I had 42 goals at
Mm-hmm.
22 years old. And for
Mm-hmm.
some reason, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who weren't in the playoffs, didn't bring me up. Like that
Yeah.
would like that couldn't happen right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it couldn't.
Yeah.
So like how did, because you were putting up numbers too on a team and in a league where the best players were that weren't in the NHL, and like you have every ounce of reason to think that you shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Right. So like what do you say to that person, or what do you like, how is that different now from that perspective?
I don't know. I mean, like you said, I mean, putting up those numbers now, you would think they would have a superstar in the waiting, and that's how I looked at it then. It's not on your time, and unfortunately, I think what a lot of these kids that are being selected with different teams, I think you look at other sports, look at the Mannings not reporting to certain organizations, and not to say that families should get into that, but the story, the gist of it is you got to be careful of who you surround yourself with, and you got to be mindful of opportunities of what organization maybe you get plugged into. If you do have that choice, we don't have that choice because there's a draft. Not all of us are free agents out of college, and we get to pick. Um, but if I'd have got selected to, you know, Philadelphia Flyers or someone else a pick earlier, or Calgary Flames, how would it have turned out different?
Yeah, who knows, right?
You know what I mean? And it's but I have zero regrets at all, and from the whole thing that transpired. It's just you learn from it. You do things now that you're doing. Maybe this led to for you to do what you do now, and
Yeah.
it makes you feel good, and you know the importance of it. And I think that's the bonus of all this. You know,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've actually said that a few times. Like, I mean, if I did have the career that I wanted, there'd be no way that you and I would be talking on this show right now, I'm sure, right?
yeah,
Because I wouldn't be doing
yeah,
what I'm doing. I'd be fishing
yeah,
with Danny Markov,
yeah,
catching
yeah,
marlin right now.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly.
So,
No,
so there is a reason. and I am grateful for that reason, because it does give you a perspective too, one that's different than somebody else, I guess, that had a different career path, right? That got different results. uh the thing with is like with the accountability aspect is there's definitely spots and steps that you could improve. Who couldn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just tough when it's like, damn, like I'm not sure how much could have changed other than like the environment you're talking about that you don't have a choice
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Like that actual thing that you said was about an opportunity too. Uh, the opportunity needs to come. Like, in the one time for me, it came was
Mm-hmm.
when in that initial trade, like when I
Mm-hmm.
first got traded to Toronto, I
Yeah.
went there. They had me on some good lines. I played minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of don't even know where the story's going, because it wasn't like I've actually felt that I played bad. I could have played better. I could have
Yeah.
had more production.
It's kind of
But
that. It's the hump, right? If you got to
yeah,
play it like 10 more games, you're over the hump, and then you can settle down and you're playing. You're
right.
playing.
And that was
And
exactly it. And so
yeah,
I didn't meet whatever threshold was there. And I remember Mike Johnson came in at the exact
yeah,
same time from college.
yeah.
And that's kind of such an interesting thing too, right? Like unheralded,
Mhm.
undrafted, on this, on that, comes in out of college and like essentially won my job. Like he started the year next year.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
I was like, you're playing uphill for the rest of the time. And for
yeah,
whatever reason they saw in him, and he went on
yeah,
to a great career. And I mean, happy for him. But it's just like that was the opportunity. Like
yeah,
that was the opportunity. That 9, 10 games was my opportunity in Toronto, and I didn't seize it.
yeah,
That's a big deal.
yeah, yeah. No, it's. I feel everyone's probably got their own, story. I think ironically, if I look back, like when I did get my opportunity, the last 10 games of my second year, I got called up to Toronto. I had 5 goals and 2 assists in the last 10 games. I thought, wow, this is, I'm off to the races. And then the next year I struggled. A new coach came in, new situation, knew this, and struggled with it. And, then eventually got traded to Vancouver and thought, okay, this is great. Following year, 9 points in 12 games, get put on waivers. You know what I mean? It just didn't add up. And I think in that environment, you do. That's what I get back to. What I say is that you have to be ready to take on that opportunity when it presents itself. And not to say that you're not going to get another opportunity, but in that environment, not too many times, it's popping up,
Yeah.
every day, every week. You got to be ready, and to have that inner mindset and inner skill set to be able to handle what's coming.
Did you make the team after? So, I mean, I did notice that. I was going to ask you about that. This, the 5 goals in 11 games. Like, geez, do the math on that. If that extrapolates over a season, the next year, did you start with the big club?
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
made the team out of camp. So that was, and then
yeah.
so if
It
you were to
was
look back on that, the
awful.
39 games, and then that's crazy, eh? 2 goals in the next 39 games after you got
Yeah.
5 and 11. How
Well, I
much
mean,
was that
you're
on you?
playing. I mean, you're playing. I'm an offensive player. I mean, not to knock. Playing fourth line, and you're as good at. Listen, if you give me a skilled player, I'll make you as good as I want you to be in that league. Basically, that's how I look at it. So, there was other players that we both know that were on the team that were, a lot more popular than I was. So you're in that predicament. And unfortunately, that's just the way it went. So, either you got to understand the rules of the game and to deal with it and do other things well, you bide your time to get that opportunity. But, I thought going to Vancouver was going to be a fresh start. And obviously, with Mike Key in there, I did extremely well. I'm very proud of what I did there. I couldn't have done anything else, but I just don't think I got out from under the Toronto stigma. And I think that's a lesson to learn for kids is you got to, like I say, not to be repetitive. You got to be ready and take advantage of an opportunity, because in that environment, it's just, you might only have one chance.
Right.
So, you know,
Take a short break from the podcast just to remind you of the mindset quiz that is now up on my website, Up My Hockey. It's a super clean, simple, easy introduction to some of the things that I help hockey players with. It'll take less than 5 minutes to complete. Super clean, super simple, and you will find out where you are at currently when it comes to your mindset with a letter grade response. So you will get a letter grade for your athlete, which is an autoresponder that it will, break down where you're currently at. The mindset quiz will also be sent to me, so I'll be able to see some of the answers and see where maybe we can make some big gains with your athlete's mindset and his skill development within that and his performance. And if you are willing, and if I think that we can help here at Up My Hockey, then I encourage a little 15-minute phone call to see where you're at and if we can help. So if you are at all interested about mindset, what that actually means, where it shows up in the game, and if your athlete or if you are a player listening, if you are somebody that could benefit from some mindset development or mindset training, then check out the Mindset Quiz. It starts the conversation, and it's definitely not something that has to be followed through with. Meaning, like it's not a hard sell at all. It's just an exposure to where we can help, where you may need some help, and encourages a conversation. So yeah, if you want to get involved in that mindset quiz, it is at upmyhockey.com. It is also on my Instagram page. If you go to my bio, it is a link available there. 2 ways to access it. There's also the Up My Hockey parent group on Facebook. If you're not a member of that, you should be. You can request access to that private group on Facebook, and the Mindset Quiz is also available there. So lots of places to take it. Get after it. It's something that you'll find interesting, I'm sure, and maybe it'll lead to some advancement in your in the personal development in the game. So let's get back to the conversation now with Brandon Convery. That next stint, like the one before you got traded to Toronto, like, and you said, was it? You said, "I wish I struggled." Were you struggling? Were you struggling with the role, accepting your role? Like, how were
Yeah,
you struggling that
yeah,
year?
yeah. I was not in a good frame of mind, just personally. I was frustrated with the way or what position I was put in, who I was playing with. Felt I was as good as others around me that were playing, and so I struggled, and it affected me. It was my own fault. Again, probably why I get into coaching and doing other things later. If I was in that position of authority, I would recognize that and pull someone aside and just talk with them. I didn't trust anyone, and it was a big issue for me and how I played and performed, and ultimately I got traded, which again was great. I would love to have a conversation with Mike Keenan to this day, just to be upfront and to say like what did go on, because it was all positive. Like I said, I had almost a point a game, and you know, I don't know what went wrong.
Right.
You know,
Sometimes
so
you don't know. But you've been super
no,
transparent, which I appreciate. I mean, and I think that's where all the good stuff comes from. One of the things that I talk about, like, so again, so your scenario there being resistant to the role that you've been given in that environment, right? Essentially, like
mhm,
there's resistance there. You think you should be in another scenario, more minutes, different line
yeah,
mates, whatever. Um, so we're balancing this idea of expectation, which is a good thing, right? That you feel that there's
yeah,
more there, that you can be more there. But then it got to a point probably where it wasn't helping you play better hockey, right? Like we
yeah.
actually became cynical, and maybe even showed up in the locker room. Like, do you think if you were to look back, did you think that like the negativity
Oh,
potentially showed up in the locker room?
100%. I didn't listen. I feel if I could label myself, it'd definitely be misunderstood. I think that a lot of people that didn't really know me at that level thought that maybe, like I overcared, and it affected me. And so I didn't trust anyone, didn't talk to anyone really, from a coaching staff standpoint or anything like that. And it affected me. I label it as misunderstood. And so fast forward getting into coaching and everything, my players, I knew them inside and out. Like there was I eliminated that right off the table. They knew that I knew what their goals were, what their outcomes were. I knew how much they cared. I knew what their family wanted for them. It's just things like that that make the difference. And getting back to those coaches you mentioned before, I mean, that's the difference. I mean, if you have someone that reaches out and gets to understand you as a person, and I'm not faulting anyone at that time because maybe they thought I was okay. You know what I mean? I didn't really talk, did my own thing, probably moped a little my own self, and didn't help my own self in that particular situation where they misunderstood how much I did care when maybe they thought I didn't care.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, it's not about, I mean, it's not about pointing fingers. I think everyone's doing the
Yeah.
best they can with what they got in the moment. You know,
Yeah.
we have to assume that's the case, right? Like no one's
Yeah.
out to get anybody. It's just like learning from our mistakes or potentially how it helped other, or I mean the effect it had on others. And you obviously did that with your coaching after. Okay, like
Yeah.
this is what I felt. This is how I'm going to do this going forward.
Mhm.
And but that is such a massive piece of the puzzle when it comes to being a hockey player. Like I always say, like you have that hockey player, of course,
Mhm.
but there is
Mhm.
a human being inside that
Yeah.
hockey player, right?
Yeah.
Which allows that hockey player to be good. And why I brought up the locker room is because that's another one like that I trumpet a lot is like, how are we showing up in that locker room?
Yeah.
And when we're, because I mean, there's an effect. I mean, Josh Jones said the other day, I mean, his dad said, be a fountain, not a drain. And I know that I could have been a
Yeah.
drain at times too. When things aren't
Yeah.
going good for you, you show up there, we're a little bit miserable. That affects people, you know,
Yeah.
like it affects people. And it's not necessarily because anyone's selfish or anyone's, you know,
Mhm.
immature. It's just didn't know any better at the time that it wasn't helping you or anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you hit it. I mean, it's like I say, you look at it, kids, 18-year-olds, like I say, I don't fault them. And so I look back, and as much as I do take responsibility, it's like maybe I do have to say, hey, I don't blame you for how you were on how you behaved. I mean, it wasn't appropriate. It wasn't like I was crazy or anything. It was just my internal self being. It just self sabotaged my play. It really did. No other answer but that. It
Yeah.
drained me physically, mentally, you name it. It did it
Yeah.
in
And
a
it's not fun
negative
anymore.
way.
Right.
No, it
Right.
wasn't fun. And that's why I'm saying, like, I got to that level and I was like, this is what this is. I played my whole life dreaming of playing in the NHL. I finally get there. I got drafted first round, do all this. And then it's like, this is it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, but that's what I get back to talking about, like setting the bar and setting goals to keep achieving certain things is that you got to reinvent yourself constantly
Yeah.
and moving the bar because it's like I got there, then I was kind of like, and then you get around players that you idolized or grew up thinking how they were and leaders and things like that, and then you get around them, and then you're like, wait a second, they're not they're not what I thought they were. Or I think for players growing up that are playing, never assume they're as good as you think, and nor are they as bad as you think.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of kids that maybe are in awe, like I was in awe of these guys when I first got drafted. I mean, I grew up, I could tell you how they taped their stick, what color they wore this. It was kind of a savant in those things. And sometimes I got caught up too mentally of being in awe as opposed to, hey, I'm actually better than these guys if I just put my head down and get after it. So
Yeah.
it was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and I find that enjoyment piece is what I'm going to stick to is because as an amateur athlete, like even the tough times in Spokane, like there was some tough times there for sure. Like I I never stopped having a good time. Like it was
Yeah.
all, and especially in minor hockey, like I didn't even pressure. Like I didn't even know what that was, right? Like it
No.
was just go play. And
Yeah.
then as a pro, there was definitely times where I was cynical. But like when I'm talking with players now and I see it showing up more as like these U13, U15, like already getting like that there's no fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing that I try and connect everyone to is like why. Like you're doing this because you loved it at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and we need to continue loving it, finding ways to love it. And part of that is enjoying that process that you said of like getting better, like just being in it, being in the
Yeah.
fight. Like that's got to
Yeah.
be part of the fun.
Yeah, and I listen. We're all enjoying things a little bit more when we're doing what we feel we're supposed to be doing, and so that's easier said than done. When and I think that's the slippery sword when you're in that environment, pro level or high level, or whether it's business or sports. It's performing at the level that you perceive yourself to perform at,
Yeah.
and maybe you have to dial it down a little bit. And while you keep moving forward in that environment, I would strongly suggest. Again, it's just getting back to the trust level from the people that are above you or the peers that are around you. I just feel like it's a team game, right? And I want your viewers or whoever's watching it, it's a team game, but ultimately it comes down to everyone is focusing on themselves, right, to be at their best. And, it's the ones that do it the best, they have the most team success where they bring out their best. But ultimately, it comes down to the individual. Even though everyone talks about team concepts and all this, I get it. But we all want to be at our best and we all want to contribute and feel like we're contributing a part of something meaningful, whether it's winning or whatever it is. But I think that environment, you do get to understand there's guys that are focusing all about themselves, and you understand it's not all about team, but you know um, trying to be at your best to help the common goal, which is ultimately to win the Stanley Cup in that environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it, and you saw it in the few teams that you were on, and I saw it for sure, like in the NHL and out of it as well. The different cultures within the greatest league in the world, right? Like
Yeah,
the ones that aren't being successful, you can look back now as an adult and be like, oh well, I can clearly see why,
yeah,
and
100%.
I can clearly see why this other group was doing
Mhm,
so well because the atmosphere in
mhm.
the room wasn't individual and it
Yeah,
wasn't, it was about making a difference. And the brief time I was with, well, I mean, I was with Toronto, I mean, not Toronto, Florida for a while, like from the
yeah,
draft to my first year pro. So, I mean, a few camps, and they had that success going to the finals the year before my first pro
mhm,
year. And that year for me, like I was a fourth line guy when I played my 21 games with them or whatever, 19, I think it was as a first year pro. And there was no real issue with that for me because like they did do a good job of just explaining that this is how you're getting involved in the game, in the league,
yeah,
right? Like I wasn't
yeah.
really worried that I only had one goal. I wasn't worried that I wasn't on the power play. It was comfortable, right? Like I had
Mhm.
comfortable minutes in a comfortable environment. I felt that I was part of the process, and I thought they did a pretty good job of like explaining to me that
Yeah.
30 years ago. And then when the trade happened, it was completely different. I didn't know what I was supposed to do or kind of where I fit in or what the plan was, and it kind of felt a little bit unnerving in some ways.
Yep.
And and I don't know if that's like whatever, but that's just a little bit of a culture piece, a little bit of a communication piece, a little bit of like a knowledge piece. The thing I want to talk about though, and I want to share a story with you that Jason Krog told on the podcast. You know him, right? Jason Krog. He played a
Mhm.
long time. He won the Hobie Baker. He
Yeah,
came
yeah,
out with the Islanders. He was a
yep.
great pro in the eye. Didn't have a ton of success in the NHL, but played quite a few games. And he told a story when he got called up from the IHL into Atlanta, I think it was at the time. And so he'd been a pro for a while. He'd won like MVP kind of in the minors, this type of
Yeah.
stuff, right? And they put him net front on the power play. And he was so pissed off that he was net front on the power play. He never played net
Mhm.
front before, right? So he's in the NHL, net front in the power play. Why the hell am I taking cross checks in the back from the big, like
Yeah.
all this stuff, right? Anyways, and in the conversation, he was like, I was so worried about being upset that I wasn't in my right spot that I didn't take advantage of the opportunity that was right in front of me of maybe playing good net front on the power play. Like, isn't
That's
that
it.
wild though, right? Like to look
That's
back on it. And
it.
I think that's just like a highlight for everyone listening right now. Like where you're at might be exactly where you need to be at. You just got to do the best you can with where you're
Yeah.
at.
Yeah. It's you hit it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We're always thinking that we're supposed to be here and there. We are where we're supposed to be, and to you know, it's kind of cliche in a sense. It's like to enjoy it, or you don't have to accept it, but to just go with it and build upon it. And like I say, I can only relate to say it's just not on your time in that environment. It's not always on your time. You know what I mean? In time, hopefully you'll get to be where you want to be, but it's just,
Yeah.
it's, I don't know how to pinpoint it, but that's funny. We can
Yeah.
all
Well,
relate to that.
I think there's a lot of people that can. And you know what? I'm gonna pick your words a little bit, and I want to see if you agree with me. So like the one thing that I say to my players is that
Yeah.
they do need to accept it, but they don't
Yeah.
have to like it.
Yeah. True.
Right? Because isn't that like the differentiation there? Like
Yeah.
you need to accept where it is that you're at. Me being in St. John's, right? Or you being
Yeah.
wherever,
Yeah.
Jason
Yeah.
Krog being net front. You got to accept it. You don't have to like it, but if you accept it, I think that resistance goes away,
No,
which
fight it.
allows you to maybe take advantage of that opportunity a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's yeah. I can only equate it to an energy drainer. You know, it's fighting it, and it's
Yeah.
just mentally and physically it comes next, and it just drains you. You know what I mean? And so I think ultimately players just got to get back to just playing and having fun, and having fun is doing what you do best. And if you're doing that consistently, if you're good enough to maintain and stay at a level that you aspire to be at, so be it. But you know, my fondest memories, I think that period maybe in Toronto where I got called up and had that stint in the last 10 or 11 games, and then in Vancouver. But other than that, my most exciting time was not in the NHL. It was in Lugano, Switzerland, post NHL, and we went on a run and won the whole Swiss league. I felt that team could have beat half the NHL teams. Like we had a great roster, Petri Newman and Mike Maniluk and you know myself with the three imports, but we won collectively as a team, and it's just night and day why we did. And I mean, and I was accustomed to winning like under 17 and World Juniors and things like that. But this was a team championship where you had to win 4-7. You know, we only had to do it 3 rounds there as opposed to 4. And we were that good and we barely won. And it's just, it's a testament to the coaching staff, who I feel the coach there was probably the best coach I've ever had from a preparedness, you know, standpoint, and also trying to get to learn and understand you as an individual as to what, makes you tick, and, but it's not for everyone. That was what I liked, what you like might have been a little bit different or someone else's, but that's where it gets back to you said earlier. It's not one size fits all. And the good ones know how to connect with various players, not just a couple.
Can we agree? Like when people ask me about mindset, right, or like what that means, it's kind of for me. I've been doing this now for like 5 years, and I haven't come up with the
Yeah.
right elevator pitch because, like,
Yeah.
when I say mindset, a lot of people think that I teach like visualization, or they think that
Yeah.
I teach like mindfulness, breathing, or something, which are
Yeah.
great tools. But I'm
Yeah.
like, no, like for me, it's like that's not even like touching the surface. What I like mindset is, yeah, your preparedness, your aptitude for wanting to improve, your
Yeah.
ability to
Yeah.
cope, your like there's so many things that come under that like fall under the umbrella of high performance, that it's like I just call it mindset. Like do you could you be more eloquent than I am with that? Like, or what
Yeah,
you
no,
see for
I
you?
think it's great. I mean, I have an ex-client that actually just graduated college and he just got out of Chicago's farm team tryouts, I think last week. He's in Indianapolis in the East Coast League, but I just texted him and said, "Hey, learn to be a good pro." What does that mean? It just means, show up on time, put in the work, you know what I mean? Be disciplined, study, be a good student. You know what I mean? Like it's nothing to do with, telling them to set goals or do anything like that, but it's just like learn to be a good pro. And if you follow Tom Brady or any of these guys, the high level guys, on how they did things and the process on how they did things, it's that approach in itself. Will get you a long way in that environment without getting overwhelmed. And maybe that's why the sports psychologist in Toronto kept saying, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, you're killing me right now. But maybe he was right. You know what I mean?
Hey, but
He
you know
was.
what? Like that's such a great thing, and I don't know. I want to dig into it. So that's like a mom or a dad saying, just go out there and play confident,
Yeah. Yeah.
or Don't worry about it. Like, yeah,
Don't
of
worry
course
about
that's the message, but like how or why? Do you know what I
it.
mean? Like
Yeah.
how would you do that now? Like maybe the message was right not to worry about it, but how do you not worry about it?
Well, I do think I look back at some of the players that I feel that, maybe, I'll say this politely, but I thought their IQ level wasn't as high as maybe the regulars, but maybe they had it right. They didn't think about it. You know what I mean? And they had 10, 15-year career in the NHL because
Yeah.
they just, whatever. You know what I mean? They just showed up. They didn't really have those high expectations or anything. They just went and they played and they worked hard and they did their job and went along. I think there's a lot of guys like that in that environment. For myself, I overthinking constantly, and so it's a good thing in one way, but also it can be, a negative thing in certain moments.
Yeah. I 1000% agree with that. And I think that the guys that have the most challenges when it comes to that are the guys that are generally intelligent. Like I mean from an IQ, like a real IQ
Mm-hmm.
standpoint, like
Mm-hmm.
not just a hockey IQ standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Uh and are cerebral, right? Which means that
Yeah.
like they overthink, and that is a real tough thing to do with a high skill set in a very very high profile demanding environment. It's like how do
Yeah.
we settle down the hamster, right?
Yeah.
And be simple.
Yeah.
I find that the guys that, yeah, to your point, that are a little simpler, let's say cerebrally, like it's an easier time for them because there's less
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. 100%. But
Yeah.
I think it gets back to the leadership that's, around the environment and great leaders on great teams. For me, a great way of making people feel comfortable and letting them be themselves, and make them feel like they can contribute to what they're working towards. But I can only equate that to the teams that we won and had the success on.
Right.
We had great leaders that were just great guys and had fun.
Yeah. That's
You
it. I
know?
mean, that's really it. I mean, anytime that I had success or my memories of success was always when it was the most fun and the
Yeah,
group was connected, right? We
yeah,
were enjoying each other. We wanted to play for each other. You wanted to show up at the rink. All those things are real big testaments to playing good hockey, which is why
yeah,
it's one of the most fundamental things that I get guys to focus on. What is it do
100%.
you love about it? And that even gets back to what we were saying before. Usually when you're doing what you do well and you really focus on that, like your unique value to the team
Yeah,
does better, you do better, you enjoy it,
yeah,
everyone's on the
yeah,
same page, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's
Maybe that's a good place to end. I know you got other business to do. I appreciate, I was going to hang on to you for as long as I could because I never know when I'll get
yeah.
you
Well,
back. So,
it's like the Olympics every 4 years. No, this is fun. This is fun. I think, like you say, it's like what we're doing. I'm in the life insurance business, but it was more or less we do a lot of disability work for players that got injured and had to retire. And so maybe, my takeaway, I wanted to make sure guys were protected and looked after, so their families were looked after. And so it's kind of similar to what you're doing. You're taking past experiences and helping the youth and the future of the game based on your knowledge and what you would do differently to help impact them in a positive way. So I think it's outstanding what you're doing. I think there needs to be more people that grasp what you offer and provide, because I think very few people actually get it, which we talked about. But it's one thing to be book smart about it, but I do think there's a component that you've actually been there and been through it and understand it. And now you're on the other side of it, which I think is great.
yeah. Well, thanks for saying that. That's a whole nother conversation, the book smart side to the experiential side, and how that fits into even
Yeah,
like the hiring process in the NHL
yeah,
and stuff, right? And the
yeah,
decision makers and what's going on. Um, I'm probably 8 years away from a degree in whatever that category would be to, get
yeah.
me through the academic door. Which is why those guys like that played and also have that are
Hmm.
very even rarer than me, right? Like in doing
Yeah,
it. But for what I'm doing in the amateur environment, the amateur space, I do feel very, very comfortable with what I'm teaching and
yeah,
how I provide the message. And there's obviously a lot of players out there that can use it. And I think even more so than ever, like I said, I'm just seeing it now show up just Yeah, it's a very common thing, and a lot of guys want to play, of course, and it's fun to see the
Yeah.
differences it can make, and that's
Yeah.
really the crazy thing, right? Like
Yeah.
a young Brendan Convery at 21, if they could have found somebody, an older Brendan Convery at 40 to sit you down, who knows what that would have looked like or could have looked
Yeah.
like, right?
Yeah.
Never know.
I
Very good,
would
man.
be fish. I'd be fishing.
Well, you better warm that spare room up for me in Nashville. We're coming at some
All
point.
right. Anytime.
Thanks for being
Anytime.
on, partner.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you for listening to the conversation with Brandon Convery, episode 140 of the Up My Hockey podcast. As I said at the intro, Brandon was one hell of a hockey player. High hockey IQ, super talented, very agile, a playmaking, creative centerman that I really enjoyed playing with. He made the game easy for me, although we rip each other behind, well, not behind each other's backs. That's not what I meant to say. We rip each other openly to each other's faces about how I carried him, and he says he carried me. And so we have good fun with that. But the reality was we were actually a pretty good combo. Although Brandon could score on his own, no question, he was a guy that liked to dish the puck, and he liked to find people who could find open ice, and that was something that I was good at, and was good at distributing the puck into the net. So we had some good chemistry together. It was an honor to play with him at the NHL level and at the AHL level, and just his story was one of those that is near and dear to my heart. Because there's some parallels between the two of us and many other players out there where it comes to, well, why didn't it work out? Sometimes it's opportunity, sometimes it's taking advantage of the opportunity when it's in front of you. Sometimes we get in our own way when it comes to our ability to assess the situation and what our response is to that situation. For Brandon, he said he was a stress case essentially the entire time that he was a pro. And when you're not enjoying yourself and you're not enjoying the game and you're not having the time to relax away from the game, your system is always on high alert. We talk about the parasympathetic system that needs to be activated so we can rest and we can relax. And when you're always in high alert and feeling like you can't trust anybody and feeling like there's nobody there that's got your best interest at heart, it can be very, very taxing on the human side of the game. And again, I don't think that it hurt necessarily Brandon's game, which is what can be so troublesome. When you are producing at the level underneath the NHL and producing at over a point a game pace and being one of the top scorers in the league, and you are supposed to be a playmaking, point producing player, you can imagine why Brandon was wondering why he wasn't hearing his name called on a team that wasn't in the playoffs, and a team that should have been trying to rebuild and develop its young players. And so Brendan's not alone in these scenarios. Where you get drafted to matters, who's in front of you matters in the lineup, what the development process is like. It's not the same for every player, and every player has to deal with it in their own way and in their own circumstances, and trying to build that support system around the player, having somebody that they can trust, having somebody that they can lean on, that they can talk to, is a very, very wise thing to do. And some players need it more than others. Quite frankly, obviously, maybe not every player does need it. I do think that there should be somebody around that is available. But every player is going to want to talk more. Maybe some are going to want to talk less. Some want constant contact. That's a personality thing. But at the end of the day, being able to manage the path through pro hockey and into pro, if you're ever lucky enough to play pro, is daunting. There's a lot that goes on with it, and to think that at 18 through 25 that these players are supposed to be able to figure it out on their own, and that they're just going to come out rosy on the other side, I think is not the wisest approach. So I hope you learned a lot from Brandon and I's discussion today, that it's not just about talent at all. It's about opportunity. It's about process. It's about support. It's about mindset. It's about so much more than just being an amazing hockey player. If you want to get, to the highest level, or even, whatever level that might be for you as an individual, whatever your NHL is, it's going to take a team. So yes, that was a long time coming. Brandon, if you did listen, I really appreciate you being on. You know that I do. I always love our conversations. And thanks to all of those who listened to the entire thing. And until next time, play hard and keep your head up.